Welcome to the Kick It Open podcast, where we celebrate bold moves and reveal the strategies shaping success in the wealth management industry. Our goal is to inspire you to kick the doors open on your personal success. I'm your host, Shelby Nickel. I am so excited about today's podcast. We have Larry Sprung with us. He's founder and leader of Mitlin Financial. Larry has built something I think truly special with his firm. He's emphasizing joy, positive money attitudes, and work-life balance and mental health, all while maintaining a truly kind of client-centric and inclusive culture. Larry, I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Shelby. Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's always start. I always like to start with your journey. How did you first enter wealth management industry, and what drew you to this profession?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with the latter first. What really drew me to the profession was growing up at a very young age. My mom was diagnosed with cancer, and I watched my dad basically take care of the household. And we were a solid middle class. We weren't poor. We weren't rich either. Had a sister who was 4 years younger than me, and watched my dad juggling being a New York City school teacher and having a side gig before there were side gigs. He had multiple jobs, and seeing him kind of, keeping all these balls in the air and learning and knowing over time that he didn't have a financial advisor, gave me pause and had me starting to think about, well, what if he did? Not that would have mitigated any of the burdens that he had, but I feel like he would have had somebody to talk to, somebody to walk through some scenarios financially and even non-financially related. And that kind of led me down the path of learning more about being a financial advisor and the profession. And ultimately, I went in right out of college, started out at a what we call a boiler room. So if you saw The Wolf of Wall Street, that's where I started. And, I joke around that what you saw in the movie was probably not as bad as it actually was in real life, but it was quite the learning experience, and ended up moving on to real firms after that. And after I got a great education on sales and how to work with people. And it's been something that I really have enjoyed being a part of the profession and helping people like my dad kind of walk through those scenarios if they were in a situation like him. But also it allows me to work with families when they're, working towards joyous occasions, whether that be retirement, child's education, buying a second home. And it's been a really rewarding journey thus far.
That's beautiful. And there's nothing like, I think, looking across a table and having the advisor say, you're going to be fine. Of course we can do that, right? And that, I think, is such the power of what financial advisors do for families every single day and business owners. Well, take us back to, how did you start Mitlin, and when did that come to be? And talk to us about those early years. What were some of the breakthroughs you had?
Yeah, so, after I was part of this Wolf of Wall Street type firm, I ended up moving on to some, larger entities that I was a part of. And I was just talking about this recently in a class, one of the local colleges, talking about my journey. And I shared with them that at the last big firm I was at, they were talking about, doing the right thing by the families, helping them, reach their goals. But at the end of the day, it always ended with the final question of, how much revenue did that generate? And it just didn't sit well with me. It never did, because I never really focused on that revenue piece. I was always focused on, the outcomes. How did we help that family? How did we add value? And that really led me down the path to say, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to have to do this in a way where I can control that narrative and be in control of the story, where we're not all revenue driven. And that led me to launching Mitlin Financial a little over 20 years ago. And, we've been working with families and working towards those outcomes ever since, and not focused on the revenue. We want to focus on helping and empowering families and bringing joy to their money journey.
Well, I definitely want to talk about joy. And you had this really strong foundation, but you've shifted and really moved into the joy wording. Can you talk about what inspired that shift and how it's impacted your practice?
So I think it all came about really, 5 or 6 years ago when we started thinking about launching our podcast, the Mitlin Money Mindset. And, Denise, who's my wife, and she's also our director of marketing, said, you need one question that you tie up each episode with where you ask the guests the same question. And that'll be like the common thread through all the episodes that you produce. And I said, okay, great, come up with a question. And, she did. She came up with, what did you do today that brought you joy? And, that question, I was like, wow, what a great question, number one. Number two, as we started recording episodes, people were like, that's such a great question. I love that you're, incorporating this into the show. And they really enjoyed answering that question. Subsequently, when I wrote my book in 2023, Financial Planning Made Personal, What Did You Do Today That Brought You Joy? We continued to, infuse this concept of joy, and it just started taking off. It really resonated now, not only with our podcast guests, but the families that we serve, people who are reading it, the media, et cetera. And we knew and saw that we were on to something. People started calling me the joy guy, and giving me that moniker. So we knew we were on to something at that point, and we just decided, like any good marketer would, to lean into it and, double down on this concept.
Well, I love that Denise is that marketing voice for you, and she and I have chatted a few times, but the leaning in is so interesting because you've leaned like all the way in. It seems as if it is coming through your discovery process and your process with clients, but it's also, anytime I see you're writing on LinkedIn, you're capitalizing the joy piece, you're bringing in those words. How deeply are you integrating it? Is it something you guys just think about all the time? Is it something you're looking for all the time? Is it just habit now?
Yeah, we're all in. It's just part of our DNA at this point. Mm-hmm. Everything from meeting with the families or prospective families we serve and having those conversations. Because at the end of the day, I think we end up in the same place, right? Advisors at the end of the day are looking at, how do we help people be financially successful, which is important, but really that money is a tool for them to find joy in their life, right? It's not that, most people are not just looking at their zeros at the end of their, bank accounts and saying, oh, this is great, this is bringing me joy. It's, oh, hey, this amount of money that I've saved, means financial freedom to me, means retirement, means I'm going to be able to send my kids to college without loans. It means many different things to many different people. But at the end of the day, they're joyful events that are typically surrounding these conversations. And we talk about it not only with the families, prospective families, but the families we serve. We start asking them about why and what this money is geared for, what joy they're expecting it to bring to them. The stakeholders that are here, we talk about what's bringing them joy and what they're expecting and looking. So we've leaned into it fully, and it's created a great environment in a world that is somewhat divisive at this very moment. It's created an environment that people are really gravitating towards and really enjoying the process.
That's wonderful. Are you seeing it create results inside of your practice as well?
Oh, 100%. From the standpoint of even we're getting emails back or texts from people that we know or affiliated with, and they're now capitalizing the joy words in their texts and emails. So it's catching on. And we're seeing a direct correlation from when we leaned into this concept and, some record growth within the firm. It's definitely resonating with folks, and it's definitely spreading, rather quickly as a result.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm so happy for you all to have that success. And I love that we're bringing this positivity to the industry. It can be an overwhelming and negative industry at times. It can have this negative attitude, right, and distrust in the industry, but also that we're often talking about the negative actions or negative life events for people, right? We're talking about death and taxes and life insurance and these things that can be a little bit heavy. And you've brought it to this really positive perspective.
Yeah, and I think I would add to that the profession as a whole tends to, lead a lot of times with fear or judgment in terms of, you'll see around, and I talk about this very often, you'll hear, oh, well, you shouldn't be drinking, a Starbucks coffee every day, because if you took that money and you invested in a Roth IRA over whatever number of years, you'd have an extra $50,000 or $100,000 in your retirement account. But at the end of the day, I enjoy drinking Starbucks, right? So if I get joy out of that, then why should I not, and I can budget for it and allocate myself that money, why should I not spend that money on that coffee and enjoy? I think about my mom when I think about situations like this, because she passed away at 47. So had she not enjoyed life along the way and just put every dollar away she could for retirement, she would never had any joy in her life and would ever have made it till retirement. So I think we have to start putting ourselves in the shoes of the families we serve and thinking about it in terms of that and saying, okay, does this bring you joy? If it doesn't, then cut it out, right? If you're just spending $5 a day or whatever it is on a cup of coffee because it's convenient and on your way to work, and you're not getting a whole lot of joy out of it, then cut it out. But if you do get joy out of that cup of coffee and you can afford it and you've budgeted for it, then enjoy it. Why not?
Yeah, I think that's so right. And definitely it's something my husband and I think about all the time. So my husband had cancer when he was 18, and it definitely still impacts how he thinks about things. But we also think about, like, what do we want our kids to experience with us? We just got back from a vacation to Istanbul and Morocco, to Marrakesh, and taking the kids for spring break. We were there for 10 days. And, some people at our age would say, oh, gosh, why aren't you just putting all that money into a Roth? Why aren't you putting it into your 401? Why aren't you putting it over into this IRA, or even just saving it and putting it into the market and buying the dip, right? Like that would be some of the instruction that we would get. And we want our kids to see with us all 7 continents. Like, that's what we've set out as a goal. And so that's what we do.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And your husband's well now?
Oh, yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
He is completely well now. Definitely very health conscious as a result, right? Those young person scares or young adult scares really change your perspective throughout life.
Yeah, great. And listen, I mean, I think you're doing the right thing. I think many people, one of the things puts off, travel. I'm going to travel later when I retire. Well, what happens if you don't make it? What happens if you're not healthy? What happens if you have an impairment at that point and you can't?
Yes.
So I think there has to be this fine line. It doesn't have to be all or none, and it doesn't, one methodology doesn't work for everybody. So you have to do what's right for you. And if that brings you joy and you want to be able to do that and you can afford it and budget, then go ahead, do it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, one of the things I know also that you're really passionate about is infusing this joy throughout your kind of client discovery process. And this is something you talk about with the client discovery process, that is something you talk about with advisors and kind of share your perspective on that. Can you talk about your discovery process that you deploy at Mitlin and how it's created value for your clients and, what you would hope other advisors might take from it?
Yeah, so I mean, we have a little bit of a different approach. We have 2 things that we focus on. One is we want to make sure that any prospective family is going to be a good fit, right? And I mean that from a couple of standpoints. One is we want to make sure that they have challenges, issues, and things that they want to address that we have the experience in addressing and successfully working and walking folks through. Because if we don't, then we may not be a good fit for them, right? So we want to make sure that we are a good fit for them and they are a good fit for us at the same time. So in many instances, we have our first meeting, just kind of an introductory quick phone call to see what their expectations are. If we're completely misaligned, at that point, we may just refer them out to somebody else or just tell them, their issues or challenges are not something we're familiar with, so we don't want to waste their time. But if that isn't the case and we're going to move forward to the next step, then we look to schedule a time for them to come in. And we have about an hour meeting where we don't necessarily need them or want them to bring in any statements or financial information. I think many people do because they feel like they have to or they're conditioned to. And the majority of that time that we spend with them is talking about how and what they find joy in, right? What are their goals? What are their main issues, challenges, or concerns that they're looking to achieve in the next 1, 3, 5, and 10 years in order to add more joy to their life and their family? And we spend the lion's share of time speaking about that. We also outline in full transparency our process, how we're compensated. I share with them a few instances of how I've found joy in my life with my family, and that it's not something we just talk about and tell families to do. I live by the same rules and the same guidelines, if you will. And essentially, we leave it up to them at the end of that meeting as far as how they would like to proceed. If they feel like it's a good fit, then we move on to, stage 2. If they don't, we kind of ask them why and what is giving them pause, just so we have an understanding. So maybe there was a misunderstanding along the way that we could clarify. And if it's truly not a good fit, then it's not a good fit, and we move on. But we want families that we can help, that we can serve, that we can work with for multiple generations, because we're proud to say that we're working with many third and we're working towards fourth generations of families that I started with 20 plus years ago in the profession. And it's very rewarding to work with a family that long.
It is. It is. I mean, you really see their ups and downs, and you've seen their whole life, and it is an incredible relationship that you're able to span those generations. That's really powerful. Do you think that there's a certain sort of secret to how you've been able to do that with those families?
I think it's just leading from a series of curiosity and truly wanting to help them in the best way possible. Obviously, those families that we've been working with for so long, this joy concept for them is also fairly new, and they're really enjoying it. But I think from the very beginning, I infused a lot of my family situation and shared with the families we were working with that family was of utmost importance to me and how I prioritized them. And I was very transparent about that. So I think to some degree, we've attracted over the years other people that are like us, that are family first. So I think that's resonated. So as their family has grown and developed, they feel super comfortable in having those additional family members meet and work with us. So I think that's something that's been a common thread since day one. Maybe we didn't really put the moniker of joy around it, but I think there was an understanding early on, just from the fact, like when my kids were young, I would take off every Friday. I started taking off Fridays in June. And then I moved it to June and July. And then the whole summer I would take Fridays off. And there are still families today that call in on a Friday during the summer and are shocked that I'm in, because they still think I'm taking Fridays off. But my kids are now 18 and 21, so they're pretty much on their own. So I don't need to do that necessarily. But I think just that concept has stuck for a very long time and really attracted those families that are aligned.
Yeah, I want to dive into that just a little bit, because you made a choice in those early years to take those Fridays off, or relatively early years when your kids were young. And it was obviously 18, 21 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever it was. Talk about, how did you create the space in your practice in order to do that? Was it just being really diligent when you were in the office on the other 4 days? I think there's a lot of advisors who struggle with that work-life balance and find themselves overrun all the time. And so how did you carve that out?
For me, it was a non-negotiable, right? Family first, even when, we're in the office that I'm in right now for about 17 years almost this year. And before we moved here, I circled a 10-mile radius around my house and said, I'm going to move my office within 10 miles because I want to be around so that I could run home, be with the kids. If I need to run into the office, it's not a huge excursion. So I think what you have to do is just make it a non-negotiable and build, make it a core value and build your life and your practice around that. And I think ultimately people respect that, and you'll attract those that do and repel those that don't. So it makes your life easier. But if you think about it, right, when you have a vacation scheduled coming up, right, and you know you're going to be out of the office for a week or 10 days, most of the time you're working extra effort, extra hours, doing what you need to do to get it done because you know that's coming up. And I would say to some degree, if you knew you were only working 4 days a week instead of 5, you'd come in every week with that same attitude and be able to get those things done. It's not any harder or any less difficult at the same time, but you can structure it in any way you want it. You just have to believe in it, you have to understand it, and you have to create a core value around it that in your heart of hearts becomes a non-negotiable, and then it works. If you're wishy-washy about it, then it's not going to work, right? If it's not something that you're truly passionate about or truly committed to, it's not going to work. So you have to commit to those things, and then you can build your life around it for sure. And people will respect that.
Are you a financial advisor ready for a big leap? Making the decision to leave your firm, whether it's a broker-dealer or an RIA, can feel like stepping into the unknown. Muriel Consulting provides personalized, unbiased support to help you navigate transformational career moves with confidence and confidentiality. Schedule a discovery call at murielconsulting.com. MURIEL consulting.com.
One of the things I know you're working on is a webinar called The Power of Leading with Joy. And you have been, obviously, we've been talking about joy here today, but obviously you've led yourself as you made those choices early on in your career. Can you talk a little bit about this webinar, what you're hoping to achieve with the project, and who it's aimed at?
Yeah, so I think what our goal is really to show other advisors of how they can lead with joy also, and give them a template for creating a similar practice, structure, whatever you want to call it, to what we have, and how it's led to record growth. And I've always been, I'm a follower of Dan Sullivan, Who Not How, and many of his other books, 10X is Easier Than 2X, and always having this abundance mindset over scarcity mindset. And what I mean by that is, if something's working for me, I'm more than happy to share that with other advisors, because I feel like the people that we're attracting, we're going to attract no matter what, and people that advisor down the block is attracting, we may not attract them, and that's fine. There's enough opportunity for all of us. There's enough families for all of us to serve. I just recently helped an advisor in the Pennsylvania area with a couple of things. He reached out to me, and we had a couple of conversations, and he called me up just about a week ago and thanked me for the time I took with him, because he's off to a record year this year as a result of the conversations we had at the end of 2024. So, I'm very much of this abundance mindset. So if we can share this template with other advisors and have them have similar success and create a more positive environment for the families that they're working with as well, and create an environment that we're helping even more families exponentially as a result, then we're all for it.
Yeah, I love that. It really reminds me a bit of, on a prior podcast, I had Julia Carlson, who's a wonderful woman advisor from LPL. She's running a huge practice, and she's also doing this entrepreneur coaching for women entrepreneurs. And she says, if I can help businesses grow from X to X, that will enable each of these businesses to give away $1 million. And if I'm helping 100 a year, well, that's $100 million that we have created this sort of flywheel of impact and momentum. And so it sounds to me like you share that same kind of an idea here, where you're like, I know this can work. It is so impactful for families. Let's share it everywhere so that all families can benefit.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. And Julia, I think, has great insight there as well. And I enjoy hearing that there are others out there with similar mindsets. So that's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, and I work with advisors who are considering moving a practice, or they're making some type of a career move. And one of the things that I always find myself talking about is personality fit, because all of these practices, all of these firms each have a very different personality. We've talked a lot here today about your personality, but your firm has this distinctive culture. Does it come through into your sort of advisor experience with the people that you're adding to your team as well? And how do you keep it for the team?
Yeah, I mean, yes, it has to. So as the advisors you're working with are looking for that cultural fit, that is something that we are guarding with 100-foot wall, right? We have to make sure that because of what we're doing and because it's working so well, our stakeholders have to be all in. They have to understand what we're trying to accomplish, the power of these, of having these joyful conversations and leading with joy is so powerful that if that's something they're not comfortable with and they're not getting enjoyment out of themselves, then they're probably not going to be a good fit for us. So we're building this wall around our culture because we think that, like you, that is the factor that is most important. Everything else, how you use a CRM, how you ultimately plan financially, how you figure out, or the service model, all the other things are things that can be learned and taught and implemented. But if you don't have this culture or this kind of thought process that you want to lead with joy and bring joy to the lives of the families we serve and the people, the other stakeholders that work here, then probably not going to be a good fit. And I feel like it's resonating out there in the world because we're getting inquiries from folks that are commenting about our culture and wanting to be a part of it and implementing. And it's something that you have to be very mindful of. We have to work at, just like we work with the families we serve, to infuse and keep up that level of joy. And we're doing the same thing in the practice to do the same thing to keep that culture growing and moving as a result.
As you think about that growth, are you looking for more people in your area? Are you looking to expand, geographically? What does that look like for you?
So I think right now, since we only have, we have the one hub here on Long Island, first and foremost is that culture fit and, the wanting to lead with joy and wanting to grow and being more productive and maybe growing quicker, faster, and smarter as a result. So we're a little agnostic to the location. If we find the right individual that has the right cultural fit, we're open to having a conversation with them and having another location in other areas of the country. But at the end of the day, if that culture fit is not there, they could be located here in New York, right on Long Island, 2 miles from our office, and it's probably not going to be a good fit in that way.
Yeah, the culture definitely comes first for you guys. Absolutely. And then probably also obviously wants to be part of an RIA. That approach, you guys are on the Carson platform, which is really strong tech with Danny Fava leading that. She's fantastic. So really interesting, kind of opportunity that you have.
Yeah, thank you. And I would say, yes, the RIA is a must. We're RIA only. Yeah. I've been RIA only for a long time now, and I see a lot of benefits of that, this structure away from the broker-dealer model. But, we've had conversations with people that have had assets on the broker-dealer side that we have a solution for that, too, to get them transitioned over to the RIA side. So those are problems we can solve for the advisor. At the end of the day, the culture is key. Everything else can be worked out, I truly feel and believe.
Yeah, that's right. And most of those hiccups or those kind of the former world where you'd say, oh gosh, I have to be on a broker dealer, most of that can all be solved for today. And we've talked about that on some of my past podcasts as well, right? It's very easy to solve for most of those challenges, like high concentrated stock positions that you don't want to charge the client for, or things like that. So we can get past all that. I want to kind of wrap up a little bit, but one of the things that I wanted to ask you about was your community or the community that you're part of, rather, called Rebel Dads. As you know, I build community. Also, I have a digital community for women in wealth management called Muriel Network. And I see women doing a lot of community building, but we don't always see the dads or the fathers or just the guys in general, the men kind of creating community and feeling that need for community. So can you talk a little bit about Rebel Dads? How'd you get involved? What is it hoping to do?
Yeah, so Rebel Dad stands for Remote Entrepreneur Balanced Leaders. And it was founded by Adam Holt of Asset Map. So those other advisors out there might know him. And Derek Notman of Coupler, which is a lead generation platform for advisors. So they are two fintech folks that created this group. And it was really for what you just discussed. There were not groups out there for dads. And they had challenges themselves with their own fathers. So they wanted to create a community where other dads could come together and share stories, resources, support each other, and elevate each other. And they started that in 2024, uniquely with a trip to Necker Island, which is Richard Branson's private island. And for their first trip in 2024, I had heard about it, and I just heard about the group. I did not have the opportunity to go. And then I was lucky enough to have Adam Holt as a guest on my podcast, the Mitlin Money Mindset. And after we were done recording, he looks at me, and I had no intention of bringing it up. And he says, hey, he goes, did I invite you to our Rebel Dads group and trip to Necker Island? And I was like, no. He's like, is it something you'd be interested in? I was like, absolutely. And, that's all she wrote. We went, Denise and I ended up taking the trip this year in 2025. We're planning on returning in 2026. And I think, at first, my first inclination was I really wanted to go to Necker Island and see this remote place that Richard Branson built and owns. And at the end of the day, after leaving there, the trip was great. The location was unbelievable, the experience fantastic, but the people, the community, as you mentioned earlier, was really the reason that I'm going back. I felt like I was with a group of people that were on the same wavelength as I was from a standpoint of being a dad, and everybody was on different parts of their journey. Some of them had newborns to, adult grown kids that are older than my kids, all along the spectrum, looking to better themselves, mostly, if not all, entrepreneurial in some way, shape, or form. Some have sold a business, some were in business still. And there was just so much learning and information that I got that improved me as a person that I'm working on, improved my life, that I was like, I got to be a part of this. So they've really created something special, and I'm very grateful that I'm now a part of it. And I agree with you, community is so important, and this is one great community that I've become a part of.
Oh, that's wonderful. And yeah, I think in this loneliness epidemic, and you hear about that, especially with men, I think it's just really fantastic that they've brought that together. All right, we're getting to the end of our time. I would love to hear your kind of closing thoughts on sort of what the future holds for Mitlin Financial. What are you really excited about as you think about growing Mitlin, as you think about growing and spreading joy?
Yeah, so for us, 2025 and leaning into this, concept of joy and the power of leading with joy, this webinar that we're going to be hosting for other advisors is really where we are leaning into for this year. People can already register and get their name on the list, and we give them a free template for having these conversations as a starting point, and they'll be the first to know about the webinar. All they have to do is go to joyfuladvisor.com, give their name and email address, and we'll do the rest. So that is the area that we're super excited in spreading this message of joy and empowering other advisors to take on these joyful conversations with the families they serve, because we feel that having these joyful conversations are just going to elevate their experience as an advisor and elevate the profession.
Well, fantastic. In wrapping up, we always love to do some quick fire questions as well. So we're going to have, I think, 4 or 5 of these. So here we go, right?
Shoot.
What's one piece of feedback that you've received that you now want to share with others?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, feedback-wise, probably the one piece of feedback that I got was from my wife, Denise, a couple of years ago, which also led into this joy, which is share your personal self, your authentic self, everywhere, online, through your social media posts, because it's really created this environment where before people even call me, and it could be families that potentially we can serve, or even advisors, before they call or contact us, they know, like, or trust me. And if they don't, they're not calling or emailing anyway. But by putting out my authentic self, that feedback has been a game changer for us at Mitlin.
Yeah. And you guys are very authentic and very personal, right? You share stories of the mental health focus that you have. And we didn't get a chance to chat about that, but I know that's something that's really important to you, as well as the joy. So that's beautiful.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Well, what is your favorite app or tool that you use for staying productive?
Oh, that's easy. That's EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. If you're an advisor and you've never read Traction, you certainly should. We operate on the EOS system, and that's something that keeps not only myself personally, but Mitlin as a firm, very productive and on track, so to speak.
Great, great. What's a book, I guess, beyond Traction, a podcast, or any other kind of media that you've enjoyed that you'd recommend? It can be personal, it could be finance, it could be business, whatever.
So most recently, I went down a rabbit hole, and your husband might appreciate this, of reading Good Energy and learning what's in our food. And it's created a whole new paradigm for myself and my family in terms of what we're eating, why we're eating certain things, and getting rid of certain things. And it's been quite the eye-opener for me personally, and has helped me become more focused and present professionally too.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to definitely go look at that, because I noticed coming back from vacation, I suddenly hit the US and was eating a lot more sugary carbs than what I had been doing in Morocco and in Turkey, and not feeling well. And I was like, oh, I need to eat differently tomorrow to get ready for the work week.
It's pretty scary and eye-opening reading this, as far as what we're doing to our population, our people, our kids. And it's been an eye-opener, like I said. I encourage everybody to take a read or listen to that one.
All right. Staying joy-filled, I think, would require a lot of energy management. Speaking of energy, what is your kind of strategy for handling stress and staying positive?
Yeah, so I meditate almost every morning, for at least 10 minutes, and then I try to exercise, or some form of exercise, almost every day, whether it be riding the Peloton. Since I went on our last Rebel Dads trip, I realized how inflexible I was during a yoga class. So I've been doing a little bit more yoga, taking that on, and doing some strength. And depending on my level of stress in any given day will depend on maybe what I do in that day, or what kind of music I listen to while I'm doing it.
Yeah, good point. Good point. All right. And what's one quality that you believe sets successful financial advisors apart from the rest?
I think there are two things. I think one thing for us personally, and if you can infuse this, is this concept of joy. And that's one of the reasons why we're going to be sharing that through the power of leading with joy, is for that. And then the second is kind of dovetailed into that EOS system, is having processes in place, because then it makes you more referable. Because if family A knows what your process is, they feel very comfortable referring you to other friends and family, because they know exactly what that process is going to be. If you deviate from that and family B tells family A, then that's going to probably cause a problem, and family A will not be referring you. So I think having that those joyful conversations, and pairing that with a very detailed process is a way to win.
Awesome. Awesome. And then what is one door that you're trying to kick open right now? Because as you know, this podcast is called Kick It Open, and we're always kicking doors open, bringing others through them. Tell us about your door.
Yeah, I mean, the door that I'm looking to kick open is to bring other financial advisors, people in the profession who are aligned with us culturally, that are looking to grow quicker, faster, and smarter. We want to line up with them side by side and walk them through that, and lead them in the direction that is going to bring them the most joy.
Oh, fantastic. Larry, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. I just love hearing about joy and how it is shaping the wealth management industry. I think it has so much potential here for our industry to create these better experiences for clients and create happiness for advisors as well. So I just love that you're bringing that to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shelby. I appreciate it, and I love what you're doing for the profession. Keep up the great work, because you're bringing a lot of great information to the profession, and I appreciate you. Enjoy your day.
Awesome. Well, to our listeners, we are kicking doors open every day. Hopefully you found this inspiring and that you are having a joy-filled day as well. Until next time, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Kick It Open podcast. The Kick It Open podcast is hosted and developed by Muriel Network. Kick It Open is produced by Shelby Nickel, edited by Aaron Sherman, graphic design by John Gallagher. If you found today's podcast valuable, please help us out by subscribing and sharing with your friends. Just click that little plus sign or the follow button wherever you get your podcasts.